I'm 56 years old and I've spent 32 years building the perfect life. Perfect house in Charleston, perfect career as a museum curator, perfect fiancé who proposed with my grandmother's ring. But when my maid of honor's fingers brushed against my bare shoulder while fastening the last button on my wedding dress, and she whispered, "You're so beautiful, Zahara," her voice breaking on my name, I finally understood why I'd been running from the truth my entire life. Some loves don't announce themselves with fireworks. They whisper in bridal suites on Saturday mornings, and by the time you hear them, it's already too late to pretend you don't know. The fitting room at Magnolia Bridal had that suffocating scent of tuberose and desperation that high-end wedding boutiques try to pass off as luxury. I stood on the pedestal in my underwear, 56 years old, and wondering why my hands were shaking. Second marriages weren't supposed to feel like this. David was a good man, solid, dependable, a retired architect with kind eyes and a portfolio that could make a younger woman weep. We'd met at a charity gala 18 months ago, bonded over our shared love of historical preservation and expensive wine. "Z, you're trembling," Marceline said from behind me, her voice carrying that smoky Z that came from 20 years of teaching poetry at Spelman College before she retired. Cold? I met her eyes in the three-way mirror. Marceline Baptiste Moreau, 58, Haitian French, with silver-studded locks swept into an elegant knot and skin like polished mahogany. We'd been friends since we were 24, young professionals in Atlanta, both trying to prove we belonged in spaces that whispered we didn't. "Just nerves," I lied. She stepped closer, and I caught her reflection. Tall, regal in her amber linen dress that matched her eyes. Those eyes had seen me through my first marriage, my divorce, my father's death, every triumph and devastation of 3 decades. She knew me better than anyone. The seamstress arrived with my dress, a cascade of ivory silk that cost more than my first car. As she helped me step into it, Marceline moved behind me, her fingers finding the tiny pearl buttons that ran up my spine. 27 of them, I'd counted. "Remember when we used to say we'd never get married?" Marceline's laugh was soft, almost sad. "We were going to be these fierce, independent women who didn't need anyone." "We were idiots," I said, watching her face in the mirror. "We were 24. You weren't an idiot. You were magnificent." Her fingers paused at button number 15, right at the small of my back. "You still are." The air in the room changed, or maybe it had always been this way, and I'd just spent 32 years pretending not to notice. The seamstress was fussing with the hem, oblivious, but I felt every millimeter of space between Marceline's hands and my skin. "Mark, shh, let me finish." She continued buttoning, and I wondered if she could feel my heartbeat through the silk. When she reached the top, her hands lingered on my shoulders. Our eyes met in the mirror, and something passed between us that had no name, no precedent in our carefully constructed friendship. "You're so beautiful, Zahara," she whispered, and my name in her mouth sounded like a prayer, like a confession, like something that could shatter the entire world I'd built. I should have said thank you. I should have laughed it off. Instead, I stood frozen, watching this woman I'd loved in the safe way friends love each other, wondering when safe had started feeling like suffocation. The seamstress stood up, beaming. "Perfect fit! You look like a queen!" But I wasn't looking at the seamstress. I was looking at Marceline, at the way her hands had fallen from my shoulders but hadn't quite left, hovering in the space between touch and absence, at the way her amber eyes had darkened to burnt honey. "Can you give us a moment?" I heard myself say. The seamstress nodded, slipping out with murmurs about checking on another client. The door clicked shut. Marceline and I stood there, me on the pedestal in my wedding dress, her behind me like a shadow I'd been casting for decades without noticing. "Z," she started. "Don't," I said. "Don't say whatever you're about to say." Why not? Because I'm getting married in 3 weeks? Because you're my maid of honor? Because we're 56 and 58 years old and we don't get to rewrite history at this age? She stepped off the pedestal platform, moving to face me directly. What if the history we wrote was wrong? The silence in that bridal suite stretched like taffy, sweet and dangerous. Marceline stood in front of me now, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something with bergamot and sage that she'd worn since graduate school. My wedding dress suddenly felt like a costume, like I was playing dress up in someone else's life. "Mark, what are you doing?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "I'm trying to figure out if I'm brave enough to ruin your wedding, or if I'm a coward who's going to watch you marry the wrong person." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather. That was always her way: poetry in the classroom, brutal honesty everywhere else. "David isn't the wrong person. He's safe, appropriate, exactly what a woman of your stature and age should want." Marceline's smile was sad. "I helped you pick him, remember? At that gala, I practically pushed you into his arms." I did remember. She'd seen him first, pointed him out across the room. "He looks kind," she'd said. "You deserve kind." What I hadn't understood then was that she was giving me permission to stop waiting for something she thought I'd never claim. "Then what's changed?" I asked. "Nothing. Everything. I don't know, Z." She ran a hand over her locks, frustration breaking through her usual composure. "Do you know how many poems I've written about you over the years?" My breath caught. "What?" 63. I counted them last night. 63 poems about hands I couldn't hold, about love I couldn't name, about watching you build a life that had no room for me except in the margins. Her voice cracked. "I burned them all, fed them into my fireplace one by one, and watched 3 decades of cowardice turn to ash." I stepped down from the pedestal, the dress heavy around my legs. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because when I buttoned that dress, when I saw you standing there about to promise yourself to someone else, I realized I'd rather have you hate me for telling the truth than spend the rest of my life pretending." She reached out, her fingertips barely grazing my cheek. "I love you, Zahara. Not the way friends love, the way that makes you stupid and brave and terrified all at once." The world tilted. Or maybe I did. I'd known, somewhere deep in the place where we bury truths too dangerous to acknowledge, that Marceline saw me differently. The way she'd avoid dating anyone seriously. How she'd visit me every Sunday morning with coffee and croissants, a ritual that had outlasted both our marriages. The way she knew exactly how I took my tea, what I needed to hear on bad days, which Mozart concerto would make me cry. "I'm getting married," I repeated, but it sounded hollow. "Are you trying to convince me or yourself?" "Both. Neither. I don't know." I pressed my hands to my face. "Jesus, Mark, we're too old for this." "That's a lie we tell ourselves, that there's an expiration date on feeling alive." She took my hands, pulled them gently from my face. "Look at me. Really look." I did. I saw Marceline Baptiste Moreau at 58, still stunning, still brilliant, her silver-streaked locks framing a face that had held my secrets for 32 years. I saw the woman who'd held me when my mother died, who'd helped me pack up my first marriage, who'd been there for every version of me I'd ever been. And I saw something else. Someone who'd been in love with me while I'd been too afraid to see it. "When did you know?" I whispered. "That I loved you? Or that it was the kind of love that ruins friendships?" "Both." She smiled, and it broke my heart. "I knew I loved you the day we met. You walked into that museum fundraiser in that ridiculous peacock green dress, looking like you owned the world. But I knew it was the dangerous kind the day of your first wedding." I watched you marry Marcus, and I wanted to object when they asked if anyone had a reason you two shouldn't be joined. I actually opened my mouth, but I was 26 and terrified, so I stayed silent. That was 30 years ago, and I've been silent ever since. Watching you with Marcus, watching the divorce, watching you date safe men who would never ask too much of you, watching you settle. Her amber eyes blazed. But I can't watch you do this, Z. I can't stand next to you in 3 weeks and hand you off to a man you like but don't love, knowing that I never told you there was another option. The door rattled, the seamstress returning. Not yet, Marceline called out, her eyes never leaving mine. 5 more minutes. We stood there, breathing each other's air, the ivory silk of my wedding dress a barrier between us and whatever came next. My mind was racing through 32 years of friendship, reframing every moment through this new, terrifying lens, every lingering hug, every too long glance, every time she'd shown up at my door with exactly what I needed before I knew I needed it. Say something, Marceline pleaded, even if it's to tell me I've destroyed everything. I don't know what to say. You've just told me that my entire adult life has been built on a foundation of things unsaid. Not unsaid, buried, there's a difference. She still held my hands, her thumbs tracing circles on my palms. I buried it because I thought that's what love meant, protecting you from complications, from judgment, from having to choose between who you were and who the world expected you to be. And now I'm tired of protecting you from the truth. Maybe I'm selfish, maybe I'm 58 and finally understanding that playing it safe just means dying slowly. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. Tell me you haven't felt it too. Tell me I'm alone in this, and I'll walk out of here and stand beside you at that wedding and smile until my face cracks. I couldn't tell her that, because she wasn't alone. The realization hit me like a wave. All those years I'd convinced myself I was attracted to safety, to stability, to men who fit neatly into the life I was supposed to want. But the person I called when I was happy, sad, angry, afraid, the person whose opinion mattered more than anyone's, the one who made my pulse quicken when she walked into a room, standing right in front of me. Oh God, I breathed. How did I not see it? Because you didn't want to. Neither did I. It was easier to be best friends than to risk everything for a maybe. Marceline's eyes were bright with unshed tears. But Z, what if we're the maybe that should have been a definitely? My hands were shaking again, but not from cold, from the weight of 32 years of almosts and not quites, from the terrifying possibility that everything I thought I knew about myself was just a story I'd been telling to stay safe. I'm wearing a wedding dress, I said stupidly. I know. I have 200 guests coming in 3 weeks. I know. My mother's ring is in that venue's safe. I know, Z, I know all of it. She cupped my face in her hands, and I leaned into the touch like I'd been starving for it. But none of that answers the question. What question? Do you love him? I opened my mouth, closed it. I care about David deeply. That's not what I asked. He's good to me. He makes me laugh. We want the same things. Zahara. My name again, that same breaking in her voice. Do you love him the way your hands are shaking right now? The way you're looking at me like I'm oxygen and you've been drowning? That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, but I need to know. Her thumbs brushed away tears I hadn't realized were falling. Do you love him? No, I whispered. Not like that. I thought maybe I could grow into it, that maybe at our age, companionship was enough. I didn't finish the sentence. Marceline kissed me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the kind of kiss you see in movies. It was soft, tentative, a question more than an answer. Her lips on mine, careful and reverent, like she was holding something precious and terrifying, and I kissed her back. Every wall I'd built crumbled. 32 years of careful distance evaporated. This was why none of the men had ever felt quite right. This was why I'd always found reasons to keep them at arm's length. This was why Marceline's opinion on my relationships had mattered more than my own. We broke apart, both of us breathing hard. Her forehead rested against mine, her hand still cradling my face. Don't apologize, I said quickly. Don't you dare apologize. I wasn't going to. I was going to ask if I should do it again. I laughed, or maybe I sobbed. Yes, God, yes. The second kiss was different. Hungrier, certain, like we were making up for lost decades. My hands found her locks, her arms wrapped around my waist, and the ivory dress crumpled between us like a surrender flag. When we finally pulled apart, we were both crying. What do we do now? I asked. I don't know. I've never gotten this far in the fantasy. The seamstress knocked again, more insistent this time. Reality came crashing back. Me in a wedding dress, Marceline's lipstick smudged on my mouth, both of us looking like we'd been caught in a hurricane. Just a minute, I called out, my voice remarkably steady considering my entire life had just imploded. Marceline stepped back, wiping her eyes, trying to compose herself. But her hands were shaking too, and there was something almost young in her face, hope mixed with terror. I need to think, I said. Mark, this is everything. My wedding, my life. David doesn't deserve. I know. She straightened her dress, tried to smooth her locks. I know, and I'm sorry for the timing. I'm sorry for all of it. But I'm not sorry for telling you the truth. The door opened before I could respond. The seamstress bustled in, all smiles and efficiency, oblivious to the emotional carnage. Everything all right? The dress looks perfect on you. Let's get some photos for your album. I stood there like a mannequin while she fussed and photographed, aware of Marceline watching from the corner, her amber eyes full of questions I didn't have answers to yet. When it was finally over, when I'd changed back into my clothes and the dress was carefully bagged and hung, we walked out to the parking lot in silence. Marceline started. I need time, I interrupted. Please, I need to think. She nodded, looking older suddenly, tired. How much time? I don't know. The wedding is in 3 weeks. I have to talk to David. I pressed my hands to my temples. I have to figure out who I am, apparently. You're the same person you've always been. You're just finally seeing all of yourself. That's the problem. I don't know if I like what I'm seeing. The words came out harsher than I meant them. I'm 56 years old, Mark. I've spent my entire adult life building a certain image, a certain life, and you're asking me to throw it all away. I'm not asking you to throw anything away. I'm asking you to stop throwing yourself away. Her voice was fierce now. Do you know what it's like watching you shrink yourself to fit into spaces that are too small for you? Watching you choose safety over joy, over and over? Maybe safety is what I need. Maybe at our age. Stop hiding behind our age. Stop acting like turning 56 means you're supposed to just accept whatever scraps of happiness come your way. She grabbed my hands. You are magnificent, Zahara Morrison. You're brilliant and beautiful, and you deserve to be loved the way I love you, completely, messily, with everything I have, not carefully parceled out like David's architectural blueprints. I pulled my hands away, anger flaring. You don't get to judge my choices. You don't get to decide what I deserve after 32 years of silence. You're right, I don't. But I'm deciding now that I deserve more than watching you settle. So I'm giving you a choice. Her eyes were blazing. In 3 weeks, you can marry David. I'll stand beside you. I'll smile for the photos. I'll give the maid of honor speech I've been writing. And then I'll walk out of your life because I can't do this anymore. I can't love you from the margins. My throat closed. Mark. Or, she continued, her voice breaking, you can choose something different. Choose us. Choose the life we could have had if we'd been brave enough 30 years ago. Choose truth over comfort. And if I can't? If I'm not brave enough? She smiled through her tears. Then you're not the woman I thought you were, and I'll have to learn to live with that. She walked to her car, leaving me standing in the parking lot of Magnolia Bridal, wearing jeans and a blouse, feeling more exposed than I had in the wedding dress. I drove home on autopilot. David was waiting, excited to hear about the fitting, and I looked at this kind, stable man who'd offered me a beautiful, uncomplicated future. He kissed my cheek, asked if I wanted wine, told me about his day at the golf course. And I felt nothing, no butterflies, no electricity, no sense of coming home. Just fondness, comfort, safety. That night, I sat in my study, surrounded by 32 years of carefully curated life. Photos of me and Marceline at every milestone, graduations, birthdays, holidays, always side by side, always just friends. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through our text messages, thousands of them. Good morning wishes, late night confessions, inside jokes, a language built over decades. And I realized I'd been in love with Marceline Baptiste Moreau my entire adult life. I'd just been too terrified to name it. The question wasn't whether to choose her. The question was whether I was brave enough to choose myself, the real self I'd been hiding even from me. I picked up my phone and typed, "Can we talk? My place, tomorrow morning, coffee and croissants?" Her response came immediately. "I'll be there. I'm always there." I looked at David, asleep in our bed. Good. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about finding someone new. They're about finally seeing who's been there all along. At 56, I learned that it's never too late to choose yourself, to choose truth, to choose the love that makes you brave instead of the one that keeps you safe. What would you do? Did Zahara make the right choice? Have you ever discovered feelings for someone after years of friendship? Should she have married David or followed her heart? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if the story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for true love.